Good morning. This is Kelly Cat Tap Talks, and I'm with Chris Snyder. And we're going to go behind the scenes and talk about crowler, growler, and keg chaos. So, what is the wildest beer related mistake you have seen at a bar, and how much did it cost?
Well, when we talk about beer mistakes, it's funny because a lot of them are behind the scenes, but you see a lot of folks make a lot of mistakes when it comes to beer that end up hurting, whether we're talking a brewery or just or a bar or a restaurant. You see a lot of people make mistakes that hurt them. And probably the most common thing I see and the I wouldn't say it's necessarily the craziest is just improper draft systems that lead to a lot of lost yield. But as far as crazy things, you see this especially in big cities where they have like high volume clubs and stuff, where people just have beer sitting in the hallway at room temperature, and then they tap it and then they serve it to people. And that A, it's bad. Nobody wants a warm beer, and B, you're never going to get yield out of it. That's probably the craziest thing that I see on a semi-regular basis. That just doesn't make sense because your product quality is not there, your customers aren't getting served, and you're not making money that you should be.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because when I go to places, I see the kegs sitting in the hallway, and I'm thinking, hey, it's prepping us to get ready to drink these beers. And yeah, sometimes it does come out a little warm. So you got a good point there. So for the average customer walking into a bar, what is something that they think they know about a draft beer that is wrong?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing that I see on a regular basis when it comes to customer perception is most people either say draft beer is the only way to drink beer, or I never drink draft beer. And the difference on that is purely your experience with draft beer. So I'll tell you a story. A buddy of mine, we're sitting having dinner. I just meet up with some guys for dinner once a week. And one of them mentioned that he can't drink Fat Tire because Fat Tire gives him a headache. Well, Fat Tire gives him a headache because the last time he drank Fat Tire, which was probably 15, 20 years ago, he went to a bar that probably had dirty draft beer lines or a bad keg. He had Fat Tire one night. He gave him a headache. He was feeling bad and hungover the next day. He went back to the same bar that night because he was on vacation. It was next to his hotel or whatever. And he had another Fat Tire, more Fat Tire, and he felt the same way the next morning. So he wrote off Fat Tire, where it has nothing to do with Fat Tire. It has to do with the fact that those draft lines probably weren't clean and they probably had some bacteria or something in them that gave him a headache. So a lot of times I think with consumers, when we think about draft beer and consumer behavior, it is a lot based upon anecdotal evidence, anecdotal experience that those folks have had. And either they've had a really good experience with draft beer or a really bad experience with draft beer. And so they've made this blanket statement in their brain about draft beer is always great or draft beer is always terrible. When in reality, draft beer is great when you have a bar or restaurant or brewery that takes good care of their draft lines. And draft beer is terrible when you have a bar, restaurant, or brewery that doesn't take care of their draft lines.
Wow. So let's be real. So how often are bars actually cleaning their draft lines versus how often they should?
Well, let's just say most of them probably not as much as they should. This is one of the things on my own podcast and in my own work that I do, I love to talk about because I don't think that a lot of bars and restaurants, breweries are really good about cleaning their draft lines because that's their business, right? If they serve bad beer, they're out of business.
Hmm.
When we talk about bars and restaurants, I don't always think that those guys are putting out the effort they should towards their draft lines because frequently what you'll see is you talk to a bar owner or a restaurant owner and they go, oh yeah, I don't clean my draft lines. The beer company comes and cleans them for me. Okay, great. Well, how often do they show up? Well, every month. Sometimes that draft tech is on vacation and it's every 6 weeks. And so you end up with inconsistent product because it's not getting cleaned because you're relying on a third party to do your job for you. And obviously, I mean, I think we all know that anytime you're relying on someone else to do your job for you and you're not like paying them or managing them,
Hmm.
that's not always a great thing to rely on, right? You're just relying on some other person doing what they should be doing based upon a purchase agreement, essentially. And that's a little fluffy, right? There are very few distributors that are, oh, yeah, we'll be there every 2 weeks and clean your lines. So, a lot of folks don't clean them as much as they should. But on the other side of that, there are some bars out there and some restaurants out there that are absolutely um, anal about how they do their draft lines. And they are in there, they're cleaning them, they're taking very good care of them. So overall, I would say that people aren't doing that work as much as they should. But you do have obviously people on both sides and a lot of folks in the middle that are doing an all right job, but not a great job.
It's more than just the draft lines, right? The silver part where the beer actually pours out, shouldn't they be taking that apart and cleaning that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
So when I
how
say
often do you clean that?
every couple weeks, every month at
Okay,
least.
just the top part. Okay.
Yeah, because when I say clean a draft line,
Mhm.
um, and I think you're correct in this. A lot of times you'll see folks and they'll say, "Oh, I ran solution through the draft line," but they never took apart the actual faucet itself. They never
Mhm.
took the tap apart, broke it down into its components, and scrubbed the components. Right? That's like saying I cleaned my bathroom because I mopped the floor. Right? You didn't touch your toilet. You didn't clean your bathroom. So it's sometimes you see people that they'll say, "Oh yeah, we do this," but they're not doing it all the way. And because they're not doing it all the way, they really haven't done it. So when I talk about cleaning draft lines, I'm saying you got to do all of it, because if you clean your draft line can be perfectly clean, but if you've never cleaned your faucet or the tap and now you have mold growing in the tap, that's not going to be good beer and that can potentially get people sick. So you can't just clean part of something, you have to clean all of it to ensure that you have great product.
Well, can a customer tell outside of um, getting sick? I mean, when you're sitting there like me, and drinking a beer, I think when they say it's fresh, I'm drinking it. Can a customer really tell? I know I can tell sometimes, but then I'm thinking it's my palate because it's something I ate. But can a customer really tell that they're really properly cleaning their line?
Kinda. And so some of this goes to each individual is going to taste things a little differently, right? So if you just think about the ability to taste in general, you have non-tasters, normal tasters, and super tasters, and that is kind of the buckets they put people in just based on how well you can pick out flavors and things, right? So when you think about like your great wine sommeliers and wine critics or beer critics, they are people that have this ability to super taste, and that's why they can taste everything in it. So just by nature, some people are going to be able to taste a lot more in something than other people. Now, I fall personally more into that super taster group, and I can taste mold in almost anything. So if there's not a clean draft line and you hand me a beer, I know exactly what mold tastes like in a draft line. I'm going to taste that.
Mm.
That's also because I've owned bars, because I've worked in bars, because I can sell bars, right? Like I'm around this stuff all the time. I have been my whole life. And so, yes, it is tasteable if A, you have to have the physical ability to taste it, and B, you have to know what you're tasting for. So while it is tasteable and some people will be able to taste it, others won't.
Hmm.
And so, but the bottom line here is if you drink a draft beer and it tastes off, don't drink it. Right? Like if I
Yeah.
go and I order a draft beer somewhere
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
drink it and I go, this don't taste right, I send it back. And the thing is that even without a bar not cleaning its draft lines, even if they're being very careful to clean their draft lines, you can run into bacteria that was in the keg before you even hooked it up, right? So it's possible that you have perfectly clean draft lines, but a bad keg, and then you'd get an off taste there. It's also possible that, this doesn't happen often, but breweries, if we really think about them, right? Breweries are some guys in a warehouse brewing some beer and putting it in kegs, right? Your craft breweries, they're not big operations. They don't have giant amounts of quality control and all this. So I've even seen instances where you get a keg of a lager and out comes a stout, right? Just the wrong beer in the wrong keg, labeled the
Wow.
wrong thing. So if you're going out and you're drinking beer and something doesn't taste right, don't drink it. Because it could be the wrong beer, it could be a bad keg, it could be a bad draft line, it could be all sorts of things. But um, trust your own gut, trust your intuition, right? So if something
Hmm.
doesn't taste right, don't do it.
So, is there a such thing as draft lines being too clean?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, You have to be a little bit careful when you're cleaning lines and things. Like, you don't want to leave cleaning solution in a line, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, people drinking cleaning solution is bad. If you leave cleaning solution in a draft beer line, it can break down the plastic that the line is made out of. But I don't think anything in a bar or restaurant can ever be too clean.
Okay. I'd rather have a clean so I can get a good beer.
Right?
All right. So, why does foam matter more than most bar owners realize? And how much money are they losing per keg? Is it because of the poor foam control?
Yeah, foam is going to be, when we talk about bars, and essentially what we're talking about here is keg yield. So whether you're a bar or you just have a kegerator sitting in your living room, right? The more foam you pour, the less beer you're pouring, the more beer you're wasting. And you'll see this all the time when you go to a bar where the bartender pours a beer and it's full of foam, and then they just kind of tilt it and they're just pouring foam out the side. Well, that's just pouring, if you're a bar owner, that's pouring your money down the drain, right?
Hmm.
Because literally you've spent money on the beer and now they're just pouring it out. Even at home, right? If you have a kegerator and you just pour that foam out, you just poured your own money down the drain. So foam is kind of the enemy when it comes to draft beer, because foam is what's going to throw off your yield and then force you to pour money down the drain. And so with foam, the main thing is that we want to stop it. And there are basically two main causes of foam, which are temperature and pressure. So when you think about a draft beer system, they're going to use nitrogen and or CO2, right? CO2 is a little bit more common, but you get into things like Guinness, right? A lot of great stouts and things
Hmm.
pour off nitrogen. Some of the great IPAs pour off nitrogen as well. And so regardless of what gas you're using, if you have that keg, or if you have that tank, that's the word, tank. If you have that tank too high, right? If the regulator's turned up too high, you're going to force more gas into it than needs to be to move that beer through the line. And if you think about, if you take a bottle of beer and you shake it, what happens? It gets all foamy. So if you have too much gas pushing it through the line, that's
Hmm.
going to agitate that beer. It's going to release the CO2 and it's going to become all foamy, just like you took a bottle of beer and shook it up. And so that's one of your major um, culprits that causes foam. Your other one is temperature. So when we think about serving beer, we really want to serve it under about 40 degrees. You get into the 40s on the kind of keg systems that we use in the US, you're going to have excess foam because that temperature is higher. That's going to cause those CO2 molecules to release out of the beer. When you have a colder system, frankly, I think most draft systems mostly must stay in like the 35 to 37 degree range.
Yeah, about
You're
38.
not
Yeah.
going to have that foam. Now, the exception to that, and why I said in the US, the systems we use, if you think about like Firkins, where you just have a keg sitting there and you're just tapping it, or some of the hand pump systems that you'll see in like pubs in Europe, those are using different mechanics to move the beer, right? In a firkin, you're just pouring it out of a tap. In the hand pump, yeah, you are introducing gas and pressure, but at a much lower rate. And so you can serve a beer warmer without having the excess foam.
Okay. Okay. So, how does beer rotation impact not just the flavor, but the the efficiencies of the cleaning process?
When it comes to beer rotation, there are a few things here. One is you should always serve the oldest beer first, right? Like that's
Hmm.
kind of should be obvious, I feel like, to everybody, because if we're thinking like everything in a restaurant or a bar, I'm not going to tell you the steak from 3 weeks ago, right? Because you don't want that. That's going to taste bad. So I want to make sure the oldest thing always gets used first. So whatever beer came in first should be the beer that you're tapping, because that's going to make sure that you're serving the freshest product possible. Now, when it comes to things like beer and age, a Miller Lite has less shelf life than a bourbon barrel aged double stout that is 15% alcohol that you can cellar for years under proper conditions. So the type of beer is going to depend a little bit there on how you have to rotate it. But when we get into actual draft systems and we're talking about rotating beers on draft, so say we have a bar that has 12 taps and they are using a few of those for domestics that stick around, and then the rest of them they're rotating the craft beers they have constantly because they don't have that many taps and they want to give their customers variety and something interesting. In that case, the big thing becomes in between each keg, really cleaning out those lines, right? This goes back to the cleaning we were talking about just a few minutes ago,
Hmm.
because especially today, when you have things like, strawberry beers, you have cucumber beers, you have blueberry beers, those are really big flavors. And if I put a blueberry beer on, and then I immediately switch that to some kind of lager, and I don't clean that line out, yeah, the rotation is great. That's great for customer variety, but now your lager tastes like blueberries. And I'm not gonna, if I want a blueberry beer, I'll order a blueberry beer. I like blueberry beer, but I don't want to order a lager and get a blueberry beer.
Hey, it might be a good pairing, good collab. I
I
mean,
mean, sometimes it'll work, right? But in general, especially from the business side, you want to make sure you're giving your guests what they ordered,
yeah, true.
not some mix of stuff that they didn't even know exists. And then they're wondering, how does this happen? Why is this way? What are you guys not doing?
So when it comes to crowlers and growlers, what is the shelf life? What's the secret? Everybody knows crowler, C, that means can. Growler, G means glass. You know, how does it get ruined? So,
So essentially, anytime we're talking about beer that we've packaged, the enemy is oxygen,
okay.
right? That's what you're trying to avoid is oxygen. So the more seal you have, the less oxygen you have, the slower that beer is going to go bad. That's why like a canned beer is good for months, just a standard commercialized can, because it's sealed really well. There's no oxygen in there. It's going to last. Now, when you get into either crowlers or growlers, there is an absolute truth in the fact that crowlers are going to have a longer shelf life than growlers, generally speaking. But either one of them, you screw them up and you hurt the shelf life immensely.
Hmm.
So looking at crowlers done right, you're going to get a good 3-4 weeks before they go bad, maybe even a couple months if it's done really, really well. I would never anticipate that because I don't think most, and this is nothing against breweries, but when you have 100 people trying to buy beer and everybody's in and out the door, you're not necessarily being the most meticulous about everything, right? Let's just be honest. That's human nature. So while you could see a crowler that in theory can last 3-4 months, probably it's not worth making that bet that it's still going to be good in 3 or 4 months. I'd rather drink it in a couple weeks and know I have a good beer. Growlers, on the other hand, done under absolutely, absolutely perfect conditions. You're maybe getting a week and a half out of it just because it's not as well sealed, right? With the crowler, we have the aluminum. We're crimping that top of that can. We're creating a very airtight seal. On a growler, maybe not as much. And so a growler, under the best of conditions, you might get a couple weeks out of. Generally, I don't let a growler sit in my refrigerator for more than a week and expect it to be any good, especially once you pop that and open it. Because that's the other thing, too, with a growler. It's going to keep better at first because think about it. There's very little space in there for oxygen to get in and interact with that beer.
Hmm.
You open it, you've poured it, you've introduced a lot of new oxygen to there. It's going to get worse quicker. So once you open something, it's going to have a lower shelf life. But in general, if we're just talking about crowlers and growlers from like a brewery or perspective,
Hmm.
um, most people when they come into a brewery, they're getting beer, they're going to drink it in the next couple days, right? So it doesn't actually, in that sense, normally matter unless you want to keep it for a long period of time. So when we look at breweries that exist in like high tourism areas or areas where people are going to want to buy that beer and then take it somewhere, yeah, a crowler is probably a better option. But if I'm just going to a brewery to buy some beer for the cookout tomorrow, I don't really care because
Yeah.
either way, I'm getting fresh beer and I'm going to drink it before there's a problem, regardless of how it's packaged.
Or somebody's going to drink it for you.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So when it comes to maintaining draft systems, who bears more of the cost? Is it the bar? Is it the brewery? And what are the hidden tensions behind it?
So, so in general, I mean, this can get a little bit squishy depending on how you look at it. But in general, right? If it's your piece of equipment in your business, it's your responsibility.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's kind of obvious, right? I mean, it's you and I both do podcasts. If our microphone broke, it's no one's fault but ours that we can't do a podcast because our microphone's broken. So likewise, if you're a brewery or a bar and your draft equipment breaks, that's kind of on you to fix it, right? Because you're losing revenue, you can't serve your guests, you're going to make people mad. You're either going to have no draft beer or a lot less draft beer than you had before. So that's just not good. So as the bar owner or as the brewery owner, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that your stuff works. Now, why I said this can get a little squishy is going back to what we talked about, where beer companies will help you do some maintenance, right? They may do some cleaning for you. They have draft techs that will come and help maintain your draft lines. And a matter of fact, depending on the beer company and your distributor and your relationship and how much you're buying, you might actually get them to come in and do some work on your draft system for you for free. So it is the responsibility, I would say, of the business owner to make sure that their equipment works in a way that they can actually make money in their business.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that as that business owner, you can't leverage your beer distributors or breweries to help you do that maintenance. And even sometimes they will pay for some of that maintenance. Now, if you own a brewery, you're on your own, right? I mean, you can hire a third party company to help you out, but you're on your own because you don't have, you're not a customer of a distributor who might have those folks to help you.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's a question for you. What's one common financial pitfall you see in small tap rooms or bar setups that no one talks about?
Well, there are a lot of them
Give,
because
give us a couple.
I talk a lot about finance, right? But talking about draft systems, the big thing is going back to yield. Because when you think about yield, right, on a keg system, when you put a keg on tap, you're never going to get 100% of that beer out of that keg. It just ain't going to happen. And so there's a roughly 120 pints per keg.
Hmm.
And I've kind of always made the assumption that you're going to waste about 12 of them. You're going to waste about 10%. So I always think, okay, we want to get 108 or better, right? That's kind of our floor of where we want to be and how many pints we can get out of a keg. And what happens is people don't do this math, right? And then they have that excess foam that we were talking about earlier. And then suddenly they're only getting 90 or 95 pints out of a keg because their bartenders are pouring a bunch down the drain. And then they wonder why their draft beer system doesn't make money, right? They look at their draft beer cost and they go, oh my God, this should be 20% because that's what I modeled it in, thinking I'd get a perfect yield, but it's actually 33%. And so from a bar's perspective, if you don't have that draft line really locked down well, it's going to be very difficult to maintain your bottom line. For a brewery, it's a little bit easier because let's be honest, the keg of the craft beer at the bar, they might have paid $200 for, and they're charging you $8 or $9 for it. So
Hmm.
they have a smaller margin. That brewery made that keg of beer for like $25 in a lot of instances, and they're still selling it at the brewery for $7, $8. So they have much larger margins. They have more wiggle room in there when we're talking about selling pints across at a brewery compared to pints across at a bar. So that's the big one, right? It's improper calculation of cost, not understanding that your yield is going to dictate your profit, and then getting mad when your draft beer doesn't make profit. And then blaming the numbers or looking at the math when in actuality it has nothing to do with the numbers and the math. It has to do with the way you're treating your draft line. So that's probably the number one thing I would say from a finance perspective that's messed up there.
Hmm.
The other one is when you see bars try to match brewery prices, right? And I've seen this argument all the time. It'll be, a guy has a beer from a brewery down the street and they go, well, I charge $6 for it. And I go, well, it's a $200 keg. You should charge like 8 or 9 if you want to make some money on it per pint. And they go, well, I can't do that because the brewery is 2 miles away and they sell it for $6. Well, yeah, they do because it costs them a quarter or a tenth of what it costs you to have that beer on tap.
Yeah.
You're always going to charge more. It's you can't set your prices based upon what the guy down the street does. You have to set your prices based upon the actual reality of the world that you're living in. And so that's another big mistake I see. And then the other one is when people make really complex ways for their bartenders to do their job. And what I mean by that is I'm sure you've been to some bars and breweries where, the bar is 10 feet wide. So the bartenders are constantly walking back and forth 10 feet to get from where the customer is to where the draft beer is. Well, that's inefficient. That takes time. And one of the biggest things when it comes to bar design or brewery design and efficient customer service, steps cost you money. So you see a lot of times where people have created these layouts and these build outs where bartenders are taking all these extra steps to serve a guest, which in reality, okay, maybe it looks really cool, but every step they take costs you money. And so not factoring that in is one of the other big pitfalls that I see.
I've never even thought about that. The steps cost you money when it comes to a bar. I always thought that if you're not serving the customer and making them feel welcome, and then you're going to lose out on money.
Well, that's true. That's true too, right? And that is true. But when it just on the design piece of it, its steps cost you money. And
Hmm.
then you do have to focus on the guest, absolutely, right? I mean, that's if you don't have good customer service and hospitality, you have nothing. Because no one wants to go to a place unless it's like Ed DeBevick's or something where that's the shtick is that they're not
Hmm.
nice to you. Unless that's the theme, nobody wants to go to a place just to get ignored or given shit.
Yeah, yeah. They want a good conversation.
Hmm.
And what's your personal and professional insight? What's one piece of advice that you would give to the younger self before opening a bar or a tap room?
So in my own
That's like
background,
a big question for you.
it is, and so let me answer this in a couple different ways.
Okay.
My own background, right? I bought a bar when I was 22, and I was pretty successful with it. But my parents had owned restaurants when I was a kid. I grew up in restaurants. I went to college for restaurants. Like literally all I have done, not all I've done, but the consistent theme throughout my entire life has been hospitality, bars, and restaurants. And so I was really comfortable buying a bar at 22 because I knew what was going on. I knew the math, I knew the finances, I knew the management, I knew the legal requirements. Like all of that was already known to me. But the biggest thing that I see in this industry is people that go, I can sit at a bar and drink beer. I sit at bars all the time. I know exactly how these things work. I watch it. I'm in a bar every day and it doesn't look that hard. So I can do this. That is the worst argument ever. Right? That's like having cancer and going to the doctor every week and suddenly saying, "Oh, I'm a doctor because I spend a lot of time at the doctors." It just doesn't make sense. And so the biggest problem I see people run into is lack of preparation. Then, along with that lack of preparation, assuming that the bar business is fun. Like, are there fun parts to the bar business? Absolutely. There are fun parts in any business that you're in. But assuming that you're going to buy a bar and hang out with your buddies and drink and party is absolutely the quickest way to lose your ass. Period. Because something that I tell everyone and that I firmly believe in is you shouldn't drink in your own bar. Right? I mean, every bar I've ever owned, I drinking it maybe with some suppliers tasting some stuff that would happen on a semi-regular basis, but as far as just sitting down and having a beer, maybe once every other year, like you just don't drink in your own bar and you don't party in your own bar, and that's not what it's about. It's a business. You have to be in business to make money. You have to be in business to take care of your customers. You have to be in business to make sure your employees get paid and that they have great lives. You can't be in business to have fun and make money. It doesn't work that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I would say drinking in their own bar is one of the biggest things I see, and it's all comes from a misconception of what hospitality actually is, and that owning a bar should be fun. When in actuality, owning a bar or restaurant or brewery is some of the hardest work there is, and some of the most competitive business there is, where it is very difficult to succeed and get ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So, have you ever walked into a bar and you just want to try to fix it, like the draft system or the storage setup, secretly. You just walk in. You know, nobody knows who you are except for your friend, and
You don't want to go out to eat with me. I am terrible. Like right now, I'll tell you, like I got a bunch of friends that won't go out to eat with me hardly anymore because every time we go out to eat, I just sit there and I'm like, I wonder why they did this. Why is this way? And I just kind of look at everything around me. Now I've been doing this for years, right? I do bar and restaurant consulting, so it's kind of just natural for me, right? That is,
hmm
a bar is essentially my office. So, I mean, you think about most people, they go in the office, they can't help themselves but work. I go in a bar, I can't help myself but work, which actually means nowadays I go out a lot less than I used to just because I annoy myself even with it. But yeah, so I go into places and see those things all the time. Um, do I ever open my mouth about it? No, because then you're just some asshole that walked in the door and started telling people what to do, and that doesn't make any sense.
they call them Karens, right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to be that person.
uh, but when you do walk in there and you see stuff in your head, how long does it? It's just festering in there for a minute. Do you just finish up what you got to do and then you just leave a little quicker than normal, or you just stay and try to ignore your observations because of your
I mean,
perception?
I ignore it unless something's so bad that I look at it and I go, oh, I don't want to stay here anymore. And so like the big triggers, if you really want to know, that'll get me to walk out of a place is
Yeah, I
I
want to know.
order a beer and it's bad. Like if I know I got a draft beer and I can taste that your draft lines are full of mold, I'm probably leaving. The Another big red flag for me is bathrooms, right? If a bathroom isn't clean, I assume nothing else is clean. So if I go to the bathroom and it's a mess, I'm probably not eating or drinking much. I might drink like some vodka in a glass because that's going to be sterile regardless, but I'm probably not having dinner. So bathrooms are a big one for me. Any bad product is a big one for me. Or, if you just some places you walk in and it's just obvious that the whole thing is in a state of disarray, and that I'm not sticking around for. So that there are a few things like that, but generally speaking, I'm sitting there noticing so many things just because I'm looking for them and I look for them on a regular basis that I just ignore it, right? Like I just hear all this stuff in my head and I go, you know what? I'm not listening to that because I want to enjoy my time and not worry about work right now. So I just mostly ignore it.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that you say bathrooms because that's a big trigger for me. When I go and I see the bathroom and it's a huge disarray, and I'm like, this is a really nice restaurant in the bathroom. Yeah, that's like,
I subscribe to the idea that how you clean your bathroom is
hmm
probably how you clean your kitchen,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
That's
And,
true.
and so to me, if you own a bar or a restaurant or a brewery or something like that, clean your freaking bathrooms. And if you go
hmm
into one and the bathrooms are bad, don't stick around. Like that is to me the number one indicator of how much people actually care.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you've coached so many people. What is one success story that still gives you chills? Success story. Then we'll probably
Yeah.
talk about a different one.
There are a number of them that I could look at, but one guy that I've been working with a lot that is just a cool dude. He guy down from Texas. He has a place called High Cotton Tavern is the name of it now, and it's kind of by New Braunfels. But he was a guy that was a insurance salesman, and he said, I want to get into hospitality. I want a bar, and he kind of started from the wrong spot. He kind of started from I want a place for me and my friends to hang out, right? Which I just talked about being the worst idea ever. But we got to know each other, and I've done some work with him over the years, and we just kind of talk some. And he, yes, started from a place of I want this spot because nothing like this exists.
hmm
But in doing that, he identified a real gap in his market, and he is a person really ingrained in his community. So he is an elder in his church. He is involved in a lot of civic organizations. He does a lot of community work. And so he kind of had a built in potential clientele there. And that worked. And being in Texas, because Texas is warm most of the time, He was able to create something that basically no one else around him had, which was a kind of indoor outdoor smoking room. So the old guys could go and smoke cigars and hang out.
Mm.
And that's what no one else had in the area. So he was able to fit an existing need he knew existed because he knew all the people that he could bring in. Yes, he created a place for himself to hang out, but then he went from there to taking an absolutely solid business approach to it, right? To worrying about the numbers, to getting into the details, to trying to count every penny and look at every potential scenario. And he's only been open, I want to say now about 6 months. But what he's seen is what we see a lot in hospitality and especially in bars. Bars only open one of two ways. Either you start way up here or you start way down here,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? You either open up to being packed or you open up to crickets. And if you open up to crickets, it's going to take a couple months for people to realize you're there, to get involved, come out, and to actually start spending money at your bar. And then you have this just kind of nice growth that then will level off when you hit a natural peak. If you start out like crazy, right? Like you'll always say, oh, this is the new hot spot. Everybody's going there. Go there 6 months from now. They're going to be half the people there because everyone's going there because it's new. They try it. So you have this huge initial upswing and then it
Mhm.
goes straight down, right? And then it'll come back up and level off. And quite frankly, if it's one of those hot spots and everybody's like, oh, you need to go there right now, don't, because there are too many people going there. They're brand new. Everything is not worked out yet. Their systems and processes aren't in place. Their kitchen is still trying to learn their menu. And because they're packed and full of people 24/7, your service isn't going to be good. Like that's not, you go there once and then you say, I didn't like this place. Well, you went when they were still trying to figure it out while they're getting slammed by everybody and everybody's being demanding and weird. Give it 6 months, then go in once they have it refined and there'll be less people. You'll have a much better time. But at any rate, back to High Cotton Tavern. What was so nice to see is he was one of those places that had this slow growth, right? And he started out and in February with a place that was largely outside. Now, granted, like I said, it's in Texas. So February, where he is in Texas, it's not like, where I am in Indiana, where it's like 20 degrees outside with a bunch of snow and stuff.
Mhm.
It was nice weather, so people would still go outside. But he started slow and he's just been building every month. And it's wonderful to see because he's set the right foundation. He put in the right concept for his area. He plays into not only the community connections he has, but into the whole zeitgeist of the area and building something that fits in with the overall just culture there. And then he's executed on it well. He's built a good culture. He's gotten the right employee. He's implementing good systems. And so while I don't even know if he's actually made money yet, to be real honest with you, because if you have this slow start, it takes a while before you're in the black.
Mhm.
But what he has seen is this consistent growth and consistently getting his systems, processes, and procedures better, consistently increasing his profit percentage. In the long run, while it's still probably a little painful for him now, in the long run, he's setting himself up for huge success by just being methodical, making sure he has the right stuff going into it, building a concept that fits his area, and now executing a culture that is going to allow that to blossom and grow.
Wow. I usually think that you want to go in, make as much money at the beginning, and then taper it off. But the way you are describing it, it is the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the
Yeah.
best way. Methodically work it through. And then,
Mhm.
because you're looking for long term.
Yeah. The difference is like if you're a nightclub, right? If you're a nightclub, if you and talk to any nightclub guy, they'll tell you this. They want to get in, they want to get as many celebrities through the door as possible. They want to make it hot because a nightclub's only hot for five years max, right?
Hmm.
And you're lucky if you make it that long. It's like a 2-year thing. So really in the nightclub business, you want to get in, make it as hot as possible, as quick as possible, then sell it to the sucker that's going to own it while it goes into the ground. Because this stuff's going in the ground because anything that relies on this is the cool, popular, amazing place to go,
Hmm.
over time, that's going to go away, right? Because when the next club opens down the street, you're no longer new and cool anymore.
Yeah, they want to go to the new person down the street. Wow. So, what's your line of business? Talk about your business and how people can find you to their get advice.
Sure. So I operate under the brand, the Bar Business Coach. I also host the Bar Business Podcast. I wrote that book behind me right there, How to Make Top Shelf Profits in the Bar Business. So I essentially put out a lot of content aimed at bar owners and how to optimize their bars, run their bars. We talk a lot about things like draft systems, but I talk a lot about finance and the math and the back end of the business, because there are a lot of folks that are out there talking about, you know, even customer service more than I do, but a lot of folks talk about all the fun stuff in the bar industry. But if you're an owner, if you're starting a bar, if you're trying to get into the business, it is not what you need to know, right? The fun stuff is all great, but you can save that for after you made some money. You can save that for after your bar actually works. You can save that for after you have the employees you need. What really matters as a bar owner or a restaurant owner is getting the fundamentals right, getting them ingrained into what you're doing, building the systems, because that's what generates your future success. And once you have all that in place, then you get to have a lot of fun. So essentially what I do is I help people build those systems and really help where I can to guide them through that process in everything from, employee training through pricing, all the financial stuff, bookkeeping. I kind of hit a lot of that stuff in the content if you go look me up. But I also do one-on-one coaching with all of this. And so I work with a lot of bar and restaurant owners in helping them improve their businesses, make their businesses better, and at the end of the day, put a little bit more profit on the bottom line. Because if you really think about this industry, there's a common misconception in the general public that, oh, this dude owns this cool bar, he must be rich. No, he ain't rich. Like, I'll tell you right now, you ain't rich. If you own 5 of them, yeah, maybe you're rich. But if you own 1 of them, you ain't rich. It just, the math doesn't work. Because if you think the average bar in America, like your neighborhood bars that you see in most places, they're probably doing 1.5, 2 million. A lot of them are doing less than that. But even if you're doing 1.5 million, if you make 10%, which is pretty good when it comes to industry standards, that's 150 grand a year. Yeah, that's not chump change, right? That's a good income. But by the time you pay taxes and you're not working for an employer, so you don't have 1K match, you don't have health insurance, right? You're paying all that out of pocket. So by the time you look at it, it's not that much money. And so it's never going to get you rich. And unless you optimize every tiny little piece of it from a financial perspective, you're not going to last very long, because it's not, like I said before, it's not particularly fun to own a bar until you get everything right. And if you're not making a lot of money and you're not having a lot of fun and people call you at 5 a.m. because something broke after close, right? I mean, when I used to own a bar, my phone literally at one point or another rang at every hour of the day, right? There were just as many emergencies at noon when, okay, I'm up and awake and this is easy to deal with, as there were at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're putting yourself through all that stress. And unless you optimize everything, you're not doing well per se. And so the only way to be successful and to have especially if you only own one bar restaurant, to have a lifestyle that's sustainable, where you can actually go on vacation, you can actually take care of your family, is to dial in every little piece that you can. And a lot of times what I tell people is, we want to look at things, it just is the way humans work. We want to look at something and say, oh, what can I do that's going to make me win right now? Or what can I do that's going to get me a big win? And in business, particularly the hospitality business and bars, there are no big wins. I can make an extra 0.25% here. I can make an extra 0.1% there. I can make an extra 0.5% there. And those are all hard, difficult things to do, but they stack on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really kind of my big thing. And it's trying to help bar owners and restaurant owners actually be able to enjoy their lives by making sure they have the background and the setup within their establishment that allows them to actually make enough money and not kind of be paycheck to paycheck, which a lot of bar and restaurant owners are.
So, how did they get a hold of you
So to get a hold of me,
to get your services?
yeah, you can go to barbusinesscoach.com. That is my coaching website. If you want to just hear me talk more, you could go to barbusinesspodcast.com. That's my podcast website, or just look Bar Business Podcast up anywhere. And you can just email me, chris@barbusinesscoach.com. That works. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. If you search Bar Business Coach, I will come up enough. Just Google it, and then whatever you find, that's a good way to get in touch with me.
And you got a book, too.
Yeah,
You
for
got a
sure.
book. Yeah. All right. Callie Cat Cap Talks, and I'd like to take the time to say thank you, Chris. And I look forward to another podcast.
Absolutely, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me on.